Hello, very warm greetings of today to all of you. Dear guys, I feel extremely honored to welcome you to this great economic platform. Dear guys, today's economic session is really going to be a very exploratory one because we are going to analyze the core intricacies of the bilateral strategic ties between India and Australia, the two friendly nations. And the pact signed between these two countries today, that is on 29 December 2022, is actually the historical moment for India because we have signed the agreement, the trade agreement with the developed nation like after a decade. So it's a great moment of pride for us. So before beginning today's economic session in detail, let's talk certain things on philosophy. And today's philosophical content is actually related to how to curb the traffic of unnecessary thoughts in the mind. Basically, a desire arises in the mind. It is satisfied. Immediately another comes. So in the interval that separates the two desires, a perfect calm reigns in the mind. It is at this moment freed from all thought, love, or hate. Complete peace equally reigns between the two mental waves, says Swami Sivananda. And it is in this particular interval that if we try to maximize the overall length of this gap, we will be able to attain that mental peace. We will be able to attain the hidden treasures within us, and hence helping us to maximize our efficiency to the fullest. So through meditation and the enthusiastic observance of the disciplines such as slowing down and keeping the mind one-pointed, we can learn to do something that sounds impossible. When thoughts are tailgating each other, we can slip into the flow of the mental traffic. Separate the thoughts that have locked bumpers and slowly squeeze ourselves in between. It actually sounds terribly daring. The kind of stunt for which the professionals in the movies are paid in four figures, yet most of us critically underestimate our strength. We can learn to step right in front of onrushing emotional impulses such as fury and little by little, inch by hard-won inch, start pushing them apart. This takes a lot of solid muscle in the form of willpower, and that's all we want. And we can build it with practice. So gradually, once we attain expertise in this particular mechanism, you will find that there is not the slightest connection between another person's provocation and your response. There seemed to be a connection because your perceptions were crowding together. Now that those thoughts have been separated, even for a hair's breadth, your response has lost its compulsive force. And that's the real victory, my dear guys. That's the real victory. Now, let's begin with today's discussion of economics in detail. As we have told you that today's discussion is actually related to the economic cooperation and trade agreement signed between India and Australia. So, as the Oz Pact kicks in, the zero duty for 96.4% of exported goods. What a wonderful news it is. The government has begun reaching out to the exporters of apparel, chemicals, plastics, gems and jewelry, engineering goods and technical textiles to take advantage of the duty concessions offered by the India-Australia Economic Cooperation and Trade Agreement, that is ECTA, which comes into force today, that is on 29 December 2022. Australia is offering zero duty access to India from day one for about 96.4% of the products exported, including many that currently attract 4 to 5 customs duty in Australia, such as leather, textiles, and gems and jewelry. This ECTA has a higher value addition of 35% to specify the country of origin to avoid circumvention from other countries. We expect the gains in many sectors where China, Vietnam and Bangladesh enjoy zero duty access in Australia, said an official. India's textiles and apparel exports to Australia are expected to grow to $1.1 billion from $0.5 billion in the next 3 years. With the India-Australia ECTA getting operationalized, India will have a slight duty advantage over Vietnam and Indonesia for the imports in the Australian market. India's ready-made garments export to Australia would grow 3 times by 2025, said Mr. Sudhir Sekhri, Vice President of the Apparel Export Promotion Council. While India's exports are diversified, ranging from agriculture, garments, and railway engines to telecom, 95% of India's imports from Australia are the raw materials and mining products needed by the industry. India's goods exports to Australia were $8.3 billion and imports were $16.75 billion in 2021-22. The Directorate General of the Foreign Trade on Wednesday, that is on 28 December 2022, notified the procedure for the allocation of tariff rate quotas for the imports of certain Australian products, including lentils, almonds, oranges, and pears under the agreement. We will actually be able to compete against Vietnam and also get an extended market in the long term in Australia. The ECTA gives us an advantage as we are getting an additional tool in terms of the low tariffs, but we are watching what other countries do with their trade agreements, said Mr. Rafiq Ahmed, chairman of the Farida Group, one of India's largest shoe manufacturers and exporters. The group supplies to the brands such as Adidas, Clarks, Marks and Spencer, then there's Debenhams and Bally Shoes. Delhi-based think tank Global Trade Research Initiative expects India-Australia bilateral trade in merchandise and services to cross $70 billion in the next 5 years due to the buoyant trade relations and Australia's gradual weaning away from China. Around $23 billion value of trade becomes duty-free from day one. India and Australia do not compete in the same sectors and need each other's support. They need each other's products and services, said Mr. Ajay Srivastav, co-founder of the think tank. We expect the big gains in exports to Australia due to the demand increases there, and because it is looking at an alternative to China to source the goods. That's the real advantage which we have, said Mr. Arun Kumar Garodia, chairman of Engineering Export Promotion Council of India. Now, what are the key takeaways related to the export boost? Duty-free export of textiles, leather, furniture, sports, goods, and jewelry. Next, no duty on railway goods, export of the critical electrical goods, exports from 4 to 5% now. Steel, aluminium, garment sector to gain from cheap raw material import. Cheap coal, metallic ores, cobalt, lithium imports to push manufacturing. Next, there would be nil duty on 6,367 goods or 98% of India's exports. Engineering goods, apparel, footwear, exporters, COs replacing China sourcing. And the apparel exports may grow to $1.1 billion from $0.5 billion in 3 years. So this is really insightful with an in-depth analysis. Now, we are going to present the views of Mr. Don Farrell, who is actually the respected Minister for Trade and Tourism, Government of Australia. He is of the view that India-Australia FTA is actually a big deal for both amid new global trade order. The Australia-India relationship is underpinned by two countries' comprehensive strategic partnership and the people-to-people links that form a living bridge between the two. The entry into force today of the Economic Cooperation and Trade Agreement represents a further deepening of ties and is actually the evidence of shared values. Over the next 20 years, a rapidly growing India will need many of the world-class goods and services exports Australia produces, including critical minerals, education and skills training and healthcare. Equally, Australian businesses looking to diversify their supply chains will see the Indian goods and services exports such as the pharmaceuticals, textiles, homewares, information technology, and software services as an attractive option. So from today, that is 29 December 2022, 96% of Indian goods exports will enter Australia duty-free, and over the next 3 years, this will rise to 100%. Indian consumers and businesses are also now benefiting from over 85% of Australian goods exports entering India duty-free, and this will rise to 90% within 6 years. Australia wants to plug into the power of Make in India and be part of India's growth trajectory. ECTA, that is Economic Cooperation and Trade Agreement, provides a strong foundation for this by eliminating the tariffs on Australian exports of the key inputs to Indian manufacturing. Similarly, most of Australia's critical minerals will now enter India duty-free, supporting India's aspiration to become a global manufacturing hub. That's really great. ECTA will help explore India's and Australia's ambitions to become the leaders in renewable energy. Australia's critical minerals are actually the essential components of low emissions technologies such as batteries, solar panels, and electric vehicles. So reducing the cost of critical minerals will drive forward the innovation in low emissions technologies and set the two nations up for the future. ECTA, that is Economic Cooperation and Trade Agreement, will also reduce the cost of inputs to other industries, including India's steel, textiles, and food processing sectors. The tariffs have been cut on Indian imports of the Australian wool, cotton, sheep meat, oats, then the Australia's native nut, that is a macadamia nut, then the basic fruit of avocados, and most seafood. It will also entice more Indians to enjoy the premium Australian produce, including rock lobsters and wine. ECTA, that is Economic Cooperation and Trade Agreement, will help unlock the full potential of the two countries' long-standing education ties by creating new opportunities for the Indian students. For the first time, Australia has confirmed post-study work rights for the Indian students graduating in Australia, and will extend the length of the stay from 2 to 3 years post-study for the eligible science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, that is the STEM graduates. Within 2 years of ECTA entering into force, the young Indians will be able to participate in Australia's work and holiday program. There will be 1,000 places a year for Indians between 18 and 30 to visit Australia and undertake work and study while holidaying. This actually offers Indians valuable overseas work experience while boosting Australia's workforce. ECTA provides a framework to streamline the recognition of professional qualifications, licensing, and registration processes benefiting the professionals such as architects, engineers, and accountants, and therefore promoting the two-way mobility. India and Australia have also agreed on special visa arrangements for the traditional chefs and yoga teachers to work in Australia. As this economic partnership grows, so too does India-Australia strategic ties, reinforced by both countries' membership of Quad and G20, and now also through the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework. Australia and India are working together to ensure the Indo-Pacific region stays resilient, inclusive, free, and open. Australia is actually resolutely committed to working its relationship with India. This includes opening a consulate general in Bengaluru in 2023 to tap into the world's fastest growing technology and startup hub, and an Australia-India Center of Excellence for the Critical and Emerging Technology Policy also in Bengaluru. But we will not rest here. The Australian government is actually committed to working with India to build on the outcomes realized by the landmark ECTA by negotiating a Comprehensive Economic Cooperation Agreement (CECA). So, through CECA, the Australian economy hopes to further deepen its bilateral trade relationship with India by achieving greater market access for the goods and services not included in ECTA, and addressing the broader issues such as investment, cooperation, sustainable development, digital trade, and government procurement. ECTA's outcomes will support greater two-way trade and business engagement, further strengthen the existing people-to-people links, and contribute to greater cultural exchange. ECTA will help live up to its name by uniting Australia and India for the generations to come. So this is really fantastic and an insightful discussion and a wonderful write-up by the great Minister of the Australian economy, who is actually the Minister for Trade and Tourism, Government of Australia, Mr. Don Farrell. Now, my dear friends, we will discuss the great insights presented by Mr. Piyush Goyal, the Union Minister of Commerce and Industry, Government of India. He is of the view, and he expresses the same that, very beautifully, that how the trade agreement with Australia will help India. The India-Australia Economic Cooperation and Trade Agreement, that is ECTA, comes into effect from today, that is 29 December 2022. This is a landmark occasion for India ahead of the major developed countries in the key indicators such as economic growth and inflation management in an otherwise turbulent world. And on this note, my dear friends, I would like to say that if we can grow with such great prosperity in such tough times, then what all miracles could we have created had all the things been normal? Had there been no global turmoil, we would have really created a magic. This is really fantastic, and we should actually be proud of our extremely dynamic leaders who have made the impossible possible. The Narendra Modi government has signed the two major free trade agreements, that is FTAs, in 2022, one with the United Arab Emirates and the other with Australia. Both free trade agreements are fair, equitable, and mutually beneficial. They open major markets for India and will promote trade, leading to millions of new jobs in the years ahead, apart from making Indian products more competitive and world-class. India-Australia Free Trade Agreement, a big deal for both amid the new global trade order. So ECTA reinforces the strategic partnership between the two parliamentary democracies that share similar legal systems. India and Australia are part of the Quad along with Japan and the United States. Both have joined the Trilateral Supply Chain Resilience Initiative, that is SCRI, along with Japan, and a 14-member Indo-Pacific Economic Framework for Prosperity, that is IPEF. ECTA, that is Economic Cooperation and Trade Agreement, is the first major free trade agreement with a developed country in over a decade. Australia has basically agreed to give duty-free access to the entire spectrum of Indian goods, while India will get cheaper raw material from resource-rich Australia. This is expected to raise the bilateral trade to about $50 billion in the 5 years span from $31 billion, which is as of now, and hence create about 10 lakh jobs in India. Both countries of this globe, that is India and Australia, will gain. That is, it would be the win-win partnership, as India primarily imports raw material and intermediate goods from Australia, while its exports are primarily finished products. So the FTA will reduce the input cost of Indian entrepreneurs and make their goods more competitive in the domestic and international markets. This also gives Indian startups great opportunities to scale up. So in addition, there are exciting opportunities for India in the services sector, which amounts to an increase in the flow of remittances. Australia will allow 1,800 yoga teachers and chefs from India to work in that country. Indian students can get post-study work visas for 18 months to 4 years depending on the level of education received, a boon for over 1 lakh Indian students. Young professionals will be able to get work and holiday visas for Australia. The Indian farmer will also benefit as the drugs approved in other developed countries' jurisdiction will get faster approval in Australia. There is good news for India's IT sector as well, as the long pending issue related to double taxation has been resolved. Financial savings of more than $200 million a year are basically expected to grow. This will also make them more competitive and help expansion. For both the FTAs signed and implemented with the UAE and Australia respectively in 2022, the Government of India undertook extensive consultations with every segment of industry, including national and regional chambers of commerce, export promotion councils, industry-specific groups, economists, trade experts, and ministries and departments. This was in contrast to the previous agreements. As a result, both FTAs, that is the free trade agreements, were welcomed by India Inc. Government of India is actually very clear that every policy or agreement must be in the national interest. In this spirit, it has signed these two FTAs but steered away from the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, that is RCEP agreement, that ran the risk of hurting the job-creating industries. Government of India wants fair, transparent, and mutually beneficial agreements that make businesses competitive, open new markets, and help create the jobs in labor-intensive sectors like textiles, gems and jewelry, leather, and handicrafts. India Inc. will basically have to focus on being competitive and improve the quality of goods and services. This is actually good for the consumers and our businesses. The Government of India is making sure that the industry emerges much stronger with these agreements. It is helping the domestic manufacturers to make in India with a slew of policies such as single window clearance and the overall decriminalization of certain offenses, including Gati Shakti, which is the National Master Plan for Infrastructure, further being driven by the initiatives for ease of doing business, special focus on MSMEs, regular policy dialogue, quality control orders, Startup India, and the Production Linked Incentive Scheme, that is the PLI scheme. An example of success is the dramatic transformation in India's toys industry. Once totally dependent on the low quality imports, it has now emerged as a major exporter. The biggest gainer from FTAs and other economic policies is the common man, who will get more opportunities as well as the world-class competitively priced products. There will no longer be any distinction between export quality and other domestically consumed products. So dear friends, I find this discussion extremely beneficial as it enhances the overall knowledge set of our economy. So, dear guys, it's really wonderful to see our country prospering at such a great level. We have been able to sign the pacts with United Arab Emirates and Australia in this year. This is truly fantastic that we have been able to create such magical deals. Yes, I'm using the word magical deals because we are the developing country and we have been able to attain this in the existing global turmoil. This is truly fantastic, and no one can stop us in becoming the leader. No one can stop us in becoming the leader because we have the strong willpower and great enthusiasm, and we are being led by extremely transformational and visionary leaders. That's the real moment of pride for us. Yes. So that's all for today, dear guys, and I really hope that you have been benefited immensely. And I know that you must also be full of pride and enthusiasm. So I welcome you guys to express your feedback, give your queries so that I can answer your queries at my best possible level, and I can incorporate your suggestions, your feedback in our subsequent video sessions. Thank you so much. Namaskar. Jai Hind.